Hey friends, I'm Chuck Quinley from Media Light. Welcome back to another episode of the Media Light podcast. Today I want to talk about winning the story wars. Because, storytelling has always been such a big part of Christian ministry. Even before that, you go to the Old Testament, 80% of the Bible, as we all know, is story. Because story is the operating system of the human mind. So God shares his message to us in the form of a story, and that is our cue as gospel communicators to learn to do the same thing. We need to become master storytellers. And that's really what the media age is all about. It's just an amazing explosion of storytelling. And that's not a new thing because human society has always been an oral society where we had the stories of our ancient past, our families, lineage, whatever kind of people we think we are. We pass who the outsiders are, who are the enemies, who are the good guys, what do we love, what do we hate as a people. All of that is in our social stories. And traditionally, you had gatekeepers in a society like your family, or your leaders, or your religious, whoever was in charge of the religious experience of your people, or your educators, or your government. They were the gatekeepers of storytelling, and they got to say, what stories were going to get told. But it's a day of broken storytelling because we've all been let down, no matter what your religion is. Your religious leaders have not lived up to the promise of their religion. There's hypocrisy in all religion. Not only that, our family systems are breaking down. Our national mythology is not so strong anymore. And so we're in a new world right now because the traditional keepers of story are now pretty much discredited. Though we still try to tell story, but we've lost a lot of our authority. And there's a whole new group of storytellers that have come along. First of all, it's those who create media, our filmmakers, our directors, our documentary, especially those who make documentary, they're about truth. And so, although we know so many of them have their own bias and they're telling a slant on the story, still that's the promise, is that I'm bringing you the truth. News media claims to be bringing the truth, the true story. And so we've got all these new, and more than anybody, the marketers, Nike, some of the others, they're using religious terminology even in their marketing. They want a brand evangelist, and they tap those deepest desires of the heart. Nike, just do it, be a champion, fight against comfort, fight against laziness, push yourself and get out there. And these inspiring messages, but they're not coming from the church. And I think this is why it's so important for all of us to realize it's not just an era of story, but it's an era of story war, because it's not only the marketers, but it's the antichrist forces in the world. Those that are wanting to twist society, those that are wanting to build hate against God's people, they are also telling stories. The good is being shown to be bad, and bad is being shown as good. And there's just a whole new world of militant storytelling. And now we talk about fake news and people who manipulate the details of a story, deep fakes, so that now we can't even trust video and photographic images anymore because we know that you can create them. And with the rise of AI, this is just becoming even more. But, it's not a new situation. We've got the new technology side that we're all having to wrestle with. But honestly, we have always been in a battle for stories. And all real wars are actually a story war. Because in your story, you're the good guys and the other guys are the bad guys, and you tell what they did, and this is how wars get started, is stories are told and passed down. And Jonah Sachs has written a book. I did a little better job of outlining it in the newsletter, so I'm not going to go back over that again. But this is really a book about the marketplace, the battle for story in the marketplace. But there's just one thing that he lifts up that I do want to talk about that I did not mention in the written newsletter, and that is the idea of a myth gap. Okay, a myth gap, because every culture, like when we think of myths, we think, oh, that means it's not true. And I'm not using the word that way. I'm using it more anthropologically or sociologically. And by that, I'm saying a myth is the highest form of story. Myth tells you what your people are about. It tells you what your ideals are, your aspirations. It says who the bad guys are, who the good guys are. Myth defines reality the way you want to have it seen. And so every culture has these myths. Judaism had these myths. And but myths, there's always an edge to a myth, and the only way it works is that everybody has to believe it. But in everybody's mythology, there are a few edges of it that you're just not sure if it's true. During the science era, I think we're sort of in a post-science era, and the modern era, we're like post-modern now. But in the science era, when scientific method was all the rage, and science at that time thought of a mechanistic universe, and Darwin was king, and he was unquestioned. Then all of a sudden, the Genesis story, literal 7 days of creation. This became a myth gap for a lot of people. It was an edge to the story that you weren't sure if it rings true. And I think who knows? I think we're past that now, because science is past that. And now Darwin is largely discredited, and we've gone on to, now we've got quantum physics, and it's opening up the mysteries of the universe again, and it's not mechanistic. And anyway, not to get down that road, but my point is, all story has an edge to it, and it has to be believable. Even if you're telling a fantasy story, it has to be within the realm of plausibility, because we have to enter into this story and decide that this story is leading me to truth. Now, what I'm trying to get back to is myth gap. When you're doing story war against another group, you want to spot the edge of the story that you think you could lean on and cause doubt in the mind of the listener. For example, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and the serpent, and so the serpent says, too bad you can't have any of these trees. And Eve says, no, that's not true. He said, you can't have that tree. If you touch it, you will die. Well, it wasn't exactly what the Lord was quoted as saying. He said, if you eat it, you will die. She says, if you touch it, you will die. And he says, that's not true. That's the edge of the story. The tree is there, and that God created them, that's clearly true, and that he is in a relationship with them, and that he's given them some kind of order, and all of it is true. There's just that one part, why doesn't he want you to eat that one tree? So that's where he wants to push. And this is really important to realize. On the one hand, if you're wanting to make war, that's how you make it. And on the other hand, we need, with every generation in the body of Christ, those who are in charge of the movement have to pay very careful attention to the edges of our story that are being brought into question by culture, by progressive forces, and take a look at those edges and lean into those edges. If they've got some loose, if some of those facts need to be nailed back down again, if our explanation needs to be tightened up, if we need to revisit that part of our story, we need to do it, because that's the part that the enemy will exploit. They will hit and punch and punch. And there are whole groups of activists who spend their time doing nothing but looking at the national mythology, at the foundation story of religion and of traditional ways, and just finding the weak points so that they can attack and exploit. This is diabolical work. This is big work, but it's also work that is, it's where the battle takes place. A lot of people think that it's all about objective truth, but it's really more about the effect of that truth woven into story, getting past the defense systems of people's minds and going right into their hearts, because humans really are not such rational creatures. We tend to make our decisions based on our emotions, and the thing that drives us more than anything else is the power of story, because we all experience our own life as a story. So all of this is good reason to explore Jonah Sachs' book and become a powerful storyteller, learn to defend against story war, but also learn to make story war, because Jesus was pretty famous for lobbing a story grenade out and then just letting it go off, and he wouldn't even explain what it meant. Just the story itself was enough to spin the gears of the mind. So Christians ought to be the most powerful storytellers in the world. And at Media Light, we spend a lot of time thinking about story and working on story. We have a whole course just called Story-Based Strategies. And you may be interested in picking up that course to just double down on your own teaching and your own understanding of how to be a better storyteller. We all need to become masterful storytellers, because you can do anything and do it in the guise of the story, and people will receive it. They will think about it. It's a very powerful ability for a gospel communicator to possess. So if there's any way we can help you grow as a storyteller, we want to, and we'd be very interested in hearing your comments in the chat box now. I hope you'll check it out from the newsletter. Just click the link. We want to talk about and have a discussion about how we can best use story for the spreading of the gospel and for discipleship. So if there's anything we can do here at Media Light to help you grow in your ability as a storyteller, you please just reach out. We are doing all we can to develop courses, working on a proposed master's program in the use of media for ministry. And so we've got some deep thinking going on there. Let us know what you think about that idea. Would you be interested if we were to develop a program? An accredited master's degree is what we would be going for in the use of media for ministry. Would you be interested in taking that course? If we do it, it'll be about a 2-year program, and we'd love to get some feedback from you in the chat box. So thanks for giving us your opinion on how Media Light can be helpful to you. We're your friends in the ministry. Look forward to seeing you and the ministry that you develop just expanding, and I will look for you online.